Hello, everybody. Jeff Mason and Dr. Michael Lee with SimpleBiz360 podcast. So glad you're here today. First things first, we have an exciting show. Would love for Dr. Michael Lee to just introduce himself and tell you a little bit about him, and then we'll get this show on the road.
Thank you, Jeff. As he said, my name is Dr. Michael Lee, and I'm an Upper Cervical Chiropractor, and you probably don't know what that means, but hopefully by the end of this podcast and this video, you will understand exactly what that means. But I'm originally from Indiana, northern Indiana, which is beautiful Elkhart, the RV capital of the world. So I grew up in Indiana, and so I was a three-sport athlete growing up. And playing all those sports, unfortunately, led me to want to become a doctor because of an injury. And I went to college in Indianapolis, the University of Indianapolis, which is on the south side. Sure. Let's go Hounds. And continued my academic career to come to St. Louis. I went to Logan University here in St. Louis and graduated with my doctorate. And I married my college sweetheart. She's an occupational therapist.
Nice.
And it just so happens that we are expecting. So we found out that 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
So yeah, I have many titles. And coming in the fall, Dad will be one of those.
Oh, it's the best title of all. Well, yeah. Welcome to the show. We're so glad to have you. And
Thank you.
So glad to have everybody out there. If you like the show and you want to subscribe to it on YouTube, if you go in the lower right-hand corner of your YouTube screen, you'll see a favicon there, a little pinwheel. Just hover over that. That'll take you to the subscription. You got to be signed into YouTube to subscribe, or you can go on any one of we're now on 27 listening platforms. So we'd love to have you on board for the ride every week. And we really, we kind of mix it up with some entrepreneurial adventures. We mix it up with some great interviews with guests like Dr. Lee. And then we have some, just monologues where we talk about different things as well. So today we are really delighted to have this episode, because we are going to try to leave you with, at the end of this, leave you with a better understanding in this sea of chiropractic operation, or chiropractic offerings, what UCC, Upper Cervical Chiropractic practice is, and we'll kind of flush this out. So, that's what we're going to do today. We're episode 84. What's really cool is Dr. Lee and I met at a Christian business men's connections group. We went to a breakfast a while ago, heard a Navy SEAL tell his testimony, and he had a great story as well to tell. And so anyway, we met there, and we've been part of a Friday morning, every Friday group where a bunch of us get together and learn God's word. And so we're just excited to be here today and to talk about all this. So Indiana, I'm a Hoosier.
That's right. Where Hoosier is a positive thing, because in the state of Missouri, Hoosier does not have many positive connotations.
So you learned the hard way.
Yes, I did. I showed up here and, where are you from? Oh, I'm a Hoosier.
Yeah.
And everybody started laughing, and they were like, yo, like you can't. No.
Yeah, yeah. For those of you, watching in other countries or listening in other countries or other states, Hoosier really is the nickname out of Indiana. I was born in Gary, Indiana. Dr. Lee's from Elkhart, and when you come to Missouri, the term Hoosier is more or less means kind of you're backwoodsy, if you will, to say
it's a very derogatory term.
Yeah. So any rate, but we also, even though we have a age difference here, we're also avid wrestling fans, and you are actually a wrestler, and you've got a dad that's been to I don't know how many NCAAs in a row, and tell us a little bit about your love for college wrestling and wrestling in general.
Sure. So like you said, Jeff, my dad was a wrestler growing up. So he wrestled and played football in college. And then after he graduated from college, he became a high school wrestling coach. And he also coached high school football. And I joke that when my mom was pregnant with me, he would poke on her belly. And that's where I really started to learn how to wrestle. And in fact, he actually made us a dummy of old he loves to sew. A wrestler that sews, it doesn't really fit.
that doesn't usually go together.
But he put together a dummy of all these sewing scraps that, 20 pounds, and so we would work on our moves. And I come from a long line of wrestlers, my dad and my uncles. And as far as the NCAA streak, this year would have been 45 straight. But due to the COVID-19 pandemic, fans wasn't allowed. And then actually the year before, they didn't have the tournament at all.
Yeah.
So this would have been 45 straight. And Indiana high school tournaments this year would have been 50 straight.
Wow.
And so my streak is 28, and I'm only 27.
Wow.
So it's a lot of people celebrate
that's
Christmas,
wild.
and we celebrate wrestling season.
Yeah, that is wild. Well, I came from a fairly big wrestling district in New Jersey where I grew up, and actually we love sharing we got 2 wrestling matches you got to watch. Number 1, we shared with each other the Spencer Lee, Austin DeSanto senior year in Pennsylvania, their last high school match together. Actually, Spencer Lee was undefeated all year, all his career.
Yep.
And he had beaten DeSanto 15-0 the year before, and he was determined. And DeSanto won. They, by the way, are both teammates on the NCAA champion Iowa Hawkeyes this year, who took the title for the first time away from Penn State. But interestingly enough, Spencer won his 3rd NCAA title there as well. So what a wrestler he is.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's cool that, these guys were the arch enemies in high school. And then Austin DeSanto actually went to Drexel first.
Correct. Yep.
And then Spencer Lee, I think, had a little bit of a hand saying, hey, if you want to be a national champ, you want to come to
it was really
Iowa.
really cool stuff. And we got another one you got to watch, a 2005 New Jersey State Championship match between Jordan Burroughs, right?
Yep.
Big name in the world of wrestling, worldwide, and then Frank Molinaro. And what a great match that was too. Thank you for sending me that. That was awesome.
Yeah, of course.
So no, awesome. So when we look back at your high school, aside from wrestling, let's just rewind the clock to 18 years old.
Sure.
I mean, where was your head at then? Were you leaning towards doing something in the medical field or not?
Yeah, so I sustained a career-ending knee injury my sophomore year of high school. And at that point in time, I was slated to go on to college and be a 2-sport athlete, just like Dad. And I want to be a teacher and coach, just like Mom and Dad. And my knee blew out, right? And so it was kind of a paradigm-altering experience. And that's what really set the seed of me wanting to become a doctor, because the surgeon that I saw was just fantastic. I mean, the education, doctor in Latin means teacher or educator. And so the surgeon just did a wonderful job and really kind of set me on this path to want to become a doctor. And as I discovered other different, other practices of medicine, my chiropractor was always in the background, because I grew up as a chiro kid. My mom's been under care for decades. And he said, Michael, there's this internal desire for the body to heal itself. And I was like, interesting. No other doctor has talked about this. And so as I studied chiropractic more, from shadowing him in his office and talking with him, I learned that, wow, you have new skin every 35 days, new liver every 6 weeks, your hair's growing right now, your nails are growing, your kidneys are going to filter the water you just drank, right? All these things are happening, and we don't think about it. We don't consciously think about it. And there's this internal mechanism inside the body that's healing. And chiropractic is just allowing the potential, that intelligence inside of the body via the nervous system, to function at its most optimal potential. And that's what really led me to go to chiropractic school.
Interesting.
Because no doctor talks about. They teach that the body is a pathological, diseased process. And health is not that. So it was cool to identify that and get to learn more about that intelligence within inside of us.
Well, and we're going to get to that, kind of a little bit later on, feeling versus function. But when we really look at the sea of different, variations of chiropractic practice. It was this book that I read, folks. This is available on Amazon. Dr. Lee works in the institute called the Weller, I believe it's called.
Getting Weller. You don't want to get better. You want to get Weller.
Yeah. And Getting Weller is owned and operated by Dr. Eddie Weller, who wrote this book. It just makes sense. It's available on Amazon. I read through it. And what I really came away with was an understanding that, there are hundreds of ways to approach the chiropractic profession.
Correct.
And you are part of a unique echelon that is called Upper Cervical Chiropractic. So you have this interest yourself at this young age to go into chiropractic, but was it, and I'm just going to abbreviate it, I don't know if this is right or not, UCC.
Sure.
Was it UCC or not? Or when did UCC, Upper Cervical Chiropractic, come into focus for you?
Yeah, so I didn't realize this getting started, but there's over 150 different chiropractic techniques that doctors use today, and it wasn't until, long story short, I met Dr. Eddie Weller, who told me, hey, the body needs no assistance, just no interference, and we've talked about that tagline, and the biomechanics and the structure and the function of how the spine works. I had some issues in school because what we were teaching and what I was learning on an independent study didn't quite make sense. And so when I met Dr. Eddie Weller, it just made sense. And so that's helped, lead into the title of the book. And a lot of people don't know this, but within the upper cervical umbrella, there's actually 13 different types of upper cervical. So it's
I had no idea. Yeah, I didn't
right.
know.
And so as you go down the rabbit hole, it just gets more specialized and specialized.
I did not know that.
So I'm one of 500 doctors in the entire world that does what it is that we do here at the office. So it's just amazing that it can be so specialized and so focused. But when people say, "Oh, you're a chiropractor," I get lumped into sure, I know what chiropractor is: twist, crack, snap.
Oh, and that's what so many of us, myself included, crack, pop, twist, pain, adjustments, constant adjustments. And there's just so many fascinating things here. And I want to read to the audience this one. So I picked this from the book. The job of the upper cervical chiropractic profession is to gauge how well the nerve system is functioning.
Correct.
So, Eddie talks later, Dr. Weller talks later in the book, calling him like he's my buddy Eddie. Eddie, hey, it's Jersey. You always put, everybody's, in Jersey, everybody's name ends with like IE. It's always Vinny, Willie, Bobby, Joey,
Sure, and it just so happens that Eddie's name does end in an IE.
There you go. So
it works out.
Excuse me, Dr. Weller. But later on, he even talks about feeling versus function. And if you could touch on that, we tend to live in a world of, hey, we're not feeling good. There must be something wrong. But, is that feeling really a message from the functioning part of our body?
Yeah. So when we think about the nervous system, right, the nervous system, I liken it to the electric system, right? If you're in your kitchen, right, you have a microwave, you have a stove, you have a dishwasher, a refrigerator, an oven. You plug all those into an electrical outlet, and that's how they get power. You can totally have the microwave, but if it's not hooked up to the power, it doesn't really work. Well, all those cells, tissues, and organs of our body, they all plug into the nervous system like your microwave or your dishwasher or your refrigerator. And so when we think about the nervous system, we're a community of trillions of cells, right? My body and your body has trillions of cells governing the millions of functions of our entire body. And of those trillions of cells, only 10% of those nerve signals going to the brain we can consciously understand, right? Only 10%. So if we base our health only off of how we feel, we're only basing it off of 10% of the whole picture.
Interesting.
Right? You invested $1, I'm only going to give you back 10 cents. Well, anybody in the investment world says, well, that's not a very good investment. So upper cervical is all about not only how you feel, because we care about how you feel, we're very empathetic to that, but we more so care about how you function. So we have the 90% that a lot of chiropractors are missing because they only care about how you feel.
So go back to the tagline again that you have.
Sure. Life needs no assistance, just no interference to its functioning.
Okay. So this is how important this functioning aspect is. And when you touch on life needs no assistance, I mean, as I come away reading Dr. Weller's book, and I know you had a part in helping to assemble that, as did many other fine professionals as well. But it really, the messaging I kept getting was that, don't confuse your feelings and then medicating those feelings. We've really got to get to the root of the problem. And in one section of the book, I believe he says, if there's something wrong inside you, you don't feel right inside you, then we have to fix what's wrong on the inside.
On the inside.
Not on the outside, not medicate the symptom, but get to the problem.
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
You are saying that right. And a lot of people say, oh, I have a symptom. Whatever the symptom, it could be pain, it could be an internal medicine, right? It could be a lot of things going on. And so people say, oh, well, maybe I should take an Advil or an aspirin. Well, you're not having that symptom because you're lacking that Advil or that aspirin. If the problem comes from the inside, then so should the answer.
Yeah.
Right. And that's that healing intelligence inside of the body that seeks to always heal, right? Where you can't stop your heart beating. You can't change your blood pressure, right? You can't change your colon digesting the lunch that you may have had, right? You can't change those.
Right.
They're happening without us consciously thinking about it. And that same intelligence inside of our body that's making that happen is the same intelligence that wants everything to heal and function at its optimal potential.
Interesting.
So I think about it like you talked about the electricity in the kitchen, right? If we have the lights on, we have lights on in the studio. If there's a dimmer switch on, we can totally see. We can do everything that we have to do with a dimmer switch on. Because if the dimmer switch stays on for a long enough period of time, that's going to become our new normal. Pain, right? A lot of people say that pain is a lifestyle. Well, no, it's not. If whatever symptom you might be dealing with is normal, then everybody would have that, right? Everybody has 2 eyes, 2 ears, a nose, right? For the most part,
right.
That's a normal thing. But dealing with pain or dysfunction or symptoms, that's not normal. So I think about it like the dimmer switch. If the dimmer switch is on, we can totally live our life, but let's live our life to our optimal potential. Right.
Very, very great. Well, and folks, I if you've been with us for all of our previous 83 episodes, we love analogies, and Dr. Lee, you do a great job, as does the book, using analogies to get points across, which we have a couple things today. But it's, I like them because they make the complex seem very simple, and you're bringing a lot of complexity, because it's hard to understand really, in a lot of ways, what's causing our pain. And we've grown up in such a medicated society that, we tend to just, so many of us gravitate to that the answer is medication.
Sure.
I think I shared with you, I suffer from gout. And when I first told my doctor that I wanted to try to approach the handling gout and managing my gout through proper diet and exercise and everything, he said, you're the only person that's ever said that to me. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, most everybody else say, doc, just give me something.
Some pill.
I'm not going to stop eating meat. I'm not going to stop doing this. So, we just have an overwhelming propensity as a society to gravitate that way. So this is a little bit different. I mean, a lot more different look, and it was really interesting to me. So you met Dr. Weller. Was he one of your professors in college? Or was he
actually was not. I was in chiropractic school, right? 4 years of chiropractic school, spending an absorbent amount of money learning what chiropractic was. And it wasn't really helping I wasn't really doing what I thought it was going to do. For example, my wife, when I met her, she was sick. If you're taking medications, you're sick, right? Taking medications and thinking that you're healthy is the same thing as taking out a loan and thinking that you're rich. So she was taking these medications. I said, you're sick. Your body's not functioning at its optimal potential because you have to take these things. So she had a lot of thyroid stuff going on, hormonal, female menstrual problems, and she was told at 16 she was an asthmatic. Oh, my wife's name is Lauren. Lauren, you can never exercise without having an inhaler. And oh, by the way, here, take this pill. And you're going to take this pill for the rest of your life to normalize your hormones and your cycles.
Yeah.
And so I'm using all the things in school of what they said would help, right? Because life needs no assistance, just no interference. So I was doing some of those techniques that they taught in school, and nothing in her body was changing. And it was very subjective based, right? Feeling as opposed to the function. I said, okay, I gotta learn something else. So I spent a lot of time traveling the country, spending even more money, studying under the technique masters. Right, people that have invented and developed their own techniques to try to learn how to help my wife.
Wow.
And it's not until we meet Dr. Eddie Weller, he moves a bone in her neck, normalizes nerve system function, and she goes from having a cycle twice a month to once every two months. Right, it was crazy, and then it was 28 days on the dot.
Wow.
Right, she ran a half marathon and forgot to have her inhaler. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So here you go from you can't exercise without one to, I ran 13.1 miles and forgot it.
That's right. And her, they said, your hormones are all, been out of shape. Those are never going to be normal.
Wow.
Fast forward, we got pregnant and we weren't trying to, right? Because the body was wanting to heal itself. It just didn't need, it had a dimmer switch on. And so it was Dr. Weller that changed my wife's life in a completely different direction. I said, okay, if it works for my wife, then it's going to work for me. And it's amazing seeing people's lives transform. A lot of chiropractors only focus on the spine.
Right.
I don't care as much about the spine as I care about what's inside of it, because what's inside of it is that nervous system, and that's what keeps us alive.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, the book and your practice explains, you know, I guess, you know, what happens in the spine, how the nerve receptors release things in the spine, from the spine. And then there's, you know, your practice, if I really understood it correctly, you really primarily focus on the C1 and the C2 vertebrae, which are called the atlas and the axis, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And it's really...
You studied.
Yeah, I did. And it's that area that is your primary area of focus, but I don't want to negate the fact that all the connectivity of that focus goes back to treating the function of the body, and that came out loud and clear. Every paragraph, every page. I mean, it was just really loud and clear to me that, you know, we were talking about the body's function. So am I correct, and I'm going to let you explain the C1, C2 axis and atlas as well, but am I correct in understanding that this type of chiropractic can also have an effect positively on autoimmune? Is that right? Or is
100%. We see a lot of, in fact, Dr. Weller was struggling with irritable bowel, right? He was in chiropractic school, and a doctor moved a bone in his neck, talked about nervous system function, and he went to, you know, having irritable bowel all the time, because you never know when it's going to be, when that's going to happen, to normal, right? Because irritable bowel is not normal. And that upper cervical spine, right, the very uppermost part of the spine, is important, both the function and the structure. Functionally, right, every nerve in the entire body meets. Right, sperm fertilizes the egg. 19 days after that happens, the brainstem forms. Right, from the brainstem comes our brain, and then it grows a tail called your spinal cord. And that brainstem area is the most important, is the most vital area of the body, because that's where every nerve in the entire body meets. And on a structural level, it's organized different than any other bone in the spine. And so structurally, it's unique, and functionally, it's unique.
Okay.
You may have heard of, do you remember Superman, Christopher Reeve?
Sure.
Right? Really unfortunate story, but it serves as a great analogy, right? Christopher Reeve was riding his horse. He got bucked off the horse. He hit his head, and unfortunately, he was in a wheelchair, right? All of his organs started to shut down, and he only broke one bone in his body. And I'll give you one guess as to what that bone was. Yeah, it was the atlas, right? The uppermost part of his spine, because it compromised the brainstem function. It compromised the nervous system so much that his body could not adapt to that stressor. And so how can he break one bone in his body, compromise nervous system function so much that he's in a wheelchair, he couldn't walk, he couldn't, all these normal functions, his body could not do. It's like if I go to the building, if I go to the main electrical panel of the building and I hit it, I turn it off, everything in the building that plugs into the electrical outlet, it loses power, right? This is the main of the house, the very uppermost part of the spine at the base of the skull. That's the main of the house.
And is that the C2 or C1?
That's the C1. Okay. So the Greek god Atlas, who holds up the world, well, you have an atlas, and I have an atlas that holds up our world, called our brain, and our spinal cord. And that's where every nerve in the entire body meets. So it's a full spine adjustment, because we're changing nervous system function. It's just focused at that one area, because it's the biggest neurological bang for our buck.
Well, and we got the bowling ball here, and we're going to ask you for a demonstration on that to kind of give us another analogy and understand how one supports the other.
Sure.
But, you know, again, yes, well, I'm so glad you touched on this, is because when I read through this, I realized that, you know, like, unfortunately, Christopher Reeve, you really realized through reading this that it's the function of all those different organs that are connected to the, you know, to everything that's happening up there. And when that stops happening and all those things shut down, you know, now it begs me to ask myself, wow, when there are situations where there's autoimmune diseases, where there are inflammation issues, where there are irritable bowel syndrome, where there are stomach, liver, kidney, you name it.
Sure.
Even muscular, I'm thinking, wow, if this is all connected to there, it can probably all be fixed or helped or assisted from there. And again, it's going back to, if it's hurting inside the body, we got to go to inside to fix it, not the outside, meaning medicate it.
Right. And you think about all the different diagnoses today, right? There's hundreds of thousands of different diagnoses. All those diagnoses have one thing in common. They all have a improper functioning nerve supply, right? And so I brought a model here, right? And so let's say that I have an issue with this nerve. Many people go to the effect. Well, there's an issue here. Let's go here. Well, this is a nerve. This is electrical wires, right, coming out of the spine to iterate the nerves, right? If there's an issue here, well, this nerve, it doesn't start here. It exits the spine, and then every nerve in the entire body meets at the base. It's the brainstem area, right? So instead of worrying about the water in the basement, Upper Cervical Chiropractic is concerned about the hole in the roof, right? We don't care so much about the effect as we do the cause. Right. And so that's why we go after the cause of all dysfunction, which is the nervous system, because that coordinates and animates everything in our body, just like the outlet. Anything that's plugged in the outlet, it's getting electrical supply. And if there's a dimmer switch on, whatever's plugged in, it's just not going to be functioning the correct way. So when you ask if autoimmune diseases, can upper cervical care help autoimmune diseases, I see it every single day in the office.
I bet you do. Well, very interesting. Thank you for that clarification. And so when we in the book, the doctor mentions about what they can expect with care and how they go through the care, and then they got to the actual adjustment part. And what's fascinating, and we'll elaborate more, is that a lot of us have this connotation of popping, cracking, twisting, and it comes off being explained as a very gentle process. Your practice is a gentle, very mapped out process that is not harsh on the body. And you talk about holding adjustments. And so before we get there, could you just show everybody why the C2 and C1 are so important with the bowling ball, how that works?
Sure. We talk about, you mentioned the twisting, cracking, popping, and snapping. A lot of chiropractors teach that that's an adjustment. Well, how do they know, right? I crack a knuckle in my finger. That pop or that crack or that sound, you're just popping a knuckle in the spine. And actually what that is on a scientific level is you're just releasing gas within that joint space, right? You have a bone, and then there's a capsule. Right. You're pulling those bones apart, and you're pulling that capsule, and you overcome that pressure. It's called a negative pressure. You overcome that pressure, and there's a pop. And my profession teaches that an adjustment just happened. Well, neurologically what that is that sends an endorphin, the feel-good hormones, to our brain. It says, ooh, I like that. I need some more of that. And so they create these quote-unquote crack addicts. And my thing is wow, how do we know that an adjustment was needed at that joint? Right? What was our method of assessment? Right? Just putting my hands on your, you feel tight there, that hurts. That's not science, right? We have an objective gauge, a thermometer, if you will, that we can take. You have a fever in your, fever in pathology or fever in sickness. We can take a temperature of the spine to see if you have a fever in your spine. Is an adjustment needed? And then after the adjustment, did I actually cause change in the nervous system?
And what's this device called?
So this is called an infrared paraspinal thermography. So long story short, it's a hypersensitive thermometer. And many doctors in chiropractic don't use this because they only use their hands as a gauge. But again, in my hands, even though I'm very well trained, that's not scientific. It's not objective. So Dr. Weller and I are actually co-authoring a textbook on the instrument to train doctors and students across the world on the uniqueness. Because how do we know an adjustment's needed? And how do we know that an adjustment actually happened? We have data using the infrared thermography, the scan, that neurologic scan. But to your earlier question, right, when we talk about the structure, we have this atlas, and this is actually a real atlas. And you can hold that if you want, Jeff. Sure. That's actually the last person that forgot to pay their bill. But so we have a 2 to 3 ounce bone that holds up this 8 to 10 pound bowling ball. right? It goes against physical law because nowhere in nature will you ever see a smaller mass such as the atlas supporting such a larger mass such as the bowling ball. So this represents our head, and then this is actually a real atlas. And it's unique because it goes against, like I said, it goes against physical law. It takes a destructive force to pull the head out of position, right? Whatever that destructive force is, that it takes a destructive force to cause that to happen. It takes a constructive force, via the gentle adjustment, to correct that, because a smaller mass supporting a larger mass, it can't correct itself, right? And that's exactly opposite of every other, every other vertebra in the spine.
Yeah, that's a great.
Yeah, and there's actually no interlocking joints. So
it just rests on it.
It just rests. We have a bone, this interlocking joint on the rest of the spine, like shingles on a roof or scales on a fish. And so my profession teaches that this bone really pulled out of position. Well, if there's an interlocking joint below and an interlocking joint above, how can that in the middle really move that much? That was one of my disconnects in school that led me to find out the answers. And upper cervical chiropractors said, well, there's no interlocking joints, and that's why it's so movable. That's why the structure and the function of the upper cervical spine is so unique. It's many chiropractors they don't teach that.
Well, and that was amazing to me that resting on a little cup,
right.
And it was so it's what each of us are built with,
right.
Designed with by our creator, and so it's just amazing how that illuminated itself in the book, and then everything else was so understandable. So in your practice with this device you're using, explain what a patient or a client, I guess you call them clients.
Clients, you're right.
Would go through or expect coming in for their first visit, and how would that progress? I realize it's different with every person, but
sure.
What do you do to take that person down the path?
Down that path, yeah. Before I explain that, I'm going to go back and say, when chiropractors, particularly upper cervical chiropractors, say that the atlas is pulling out of position, we're not saying that it's a hard bone on a soft nerve. That's an old construct, and a lot of times people in the medical profession says, well, the bones really can't move that much. They're correct. So when we're talking about movement, we're talking millimeters. So there's not a hard bone on a soft. Okay. We're talking millimeters, and it's just distorting that signal from the brain through the brainstem to the spinal cord. But as far as somebody, you come into the office, right? Day one, we have it broken up into 3 separate days. Right, day one is day-to-day. We need to collect a lot of data, right? So many people go to see a chiropractor, they walking off the street, there's no objective data done. They just put their hands on someone's spine and twist their head off like a chicken. And that's scary to me because thus far in practice, I haven't been out in practice as long as Dr. Weller has, but I've seen some pretty interesting things on films that would never show up in a physical exam. Such as, what your typical chiropractor would do. So day one is day-to-day. Yeah. We do 15 neurologic, structural, functional, postural exams to really get a good idea of what's going on with you. Because if we look different on the outside, we definitely look different on the inside.
Right.
And part of that day one process is we talked about the Neurologic Scan, right? That's just a hypersensitive thermometer, because anytime you interfere with electrical flow, we've been talking a lot about electricity. Yep. Right? Anytime you interfere with electrical flow, a byproduct is heat. Right? Lightning comes out of the sky, it hits the ground, a fire happens. Right? If the head pulls out of position and that atlas moves, that's going to cause excess or an asymmetry of heat within the spine, and that scanner allows us to objectively measure that. And another unique thing that we use in the office is called 3D spinal imaging. And right now, as we know of, per this recording, we're the only chiropractors in the state of Missouri that use 3D spinal imaging in addition to the infrared scan. So there's no guessing going on. So we just have an elevated ability to take care of you and take care of what might be that unresolved health condition that you may have. Day two, we do a second neurologic scan. Day one, we did a scan. In addition to everything else, day two, we do a second scan. And we go over all of the data that we collected. Because how many times, Jeff, have you gone to a doctor and they said, oh, Jeff, you have gout, maybe let's order some sort of test, and sorry. And then they give you a piece of paper with a paragraph, all these words you have to Google, and you don't really understand that.
Right.
So our second day, we do that second infrared scan, and we sit down and go over all of that data. Hey, Jeff, this is what I'm finding, and this is what I want to do about it. Right. And then day 3, we do a third neurologic scan. So we have 3 separate days of scans to get a baseline spinal pattern. In the book, you probably read about a fingerprint. Everybody has a unique spinal print, and without the objective gauge, I'd have no idea when your body neurologically needs an adjustment. Right. So that third day is when that first adjustment happens. And the whole time, the educational process, we're building up to that adjustment. Right. We're getting those 3 separate scans, and we're saying, Jeff, your body is just not functioning at its optimal potential. How do we know? I've collected all this data. I have all these scans. This is what that means. And then that first adjustment is when your life changes, because that dimmer switch that is causing that gout, that dimmer switch, it gets flipped on. So the lights in your body are functioning at their optimal potential, and that's the goal.
Interesting. I know I'm saying that a lot throughout the affirmation process here, but it is interesting to me because, again, I've only had one experience in my life with a chiropractor.
Sure.
And it was not pleasant. I pulled some muscles, put in some big containers in the back of my car filled with clothing, and I went in, and oh my gosh, it was just I came out of there hurting more, and I realized it was probably, in hindsight, probably good hurt, some of it, but I mean, it just wasn't. The cracks and the pops, that wasn't for me. I didn't get any high off of it. I was like ready to
sure,
tuck my tail in between my legs, and I'm never coming back. I'm at the door, and so it was very interesting. So the process of adjustment. Walk the listeners and viewers through how gentle or it can be, because it really came off. So that surprised me when I read that.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people think that it should hurt. Oh, that hurts so good. Why does that hurt so good? Pain is a evolutionary process built in the body to say stop, right? That's the check engine light of the brain. If you're feeling pain, something's not right, right? There should never be any twisting, cracking, popping of the spine ever. And so we never do that with people. How do we know their spine needs to be adjusted the way it needs to be adjusted? We have those 3D films. And so at the head of the chiropractic table, we have your films, so we can customize the adjustment to what your body needs. Because again, we look different on the outside. We definitely look different on the inside. And so a lot of people that have been to a chiropractor before, oh yeah, that pop, that crunch, right? The upper cervical adjustment, when done correctly, is the same amount of pressure that you could put on your eye. And so you put pressure on when it starts to hurt, back it off, and that's the amount of pressure that it takes to adjust the atlas in the correct way, based off of your 3D films that we took on your first visit.
Interesting. So then the adjustment, it seems to be a more gradual set of motions. Is that correct? And it's not this abrupt event. Is that correct? Or can it be?
It's gentle, but it has to be fast. And so the type of table that we use, the mechanism of that table came out in 1958. And it's interesting because it uses something called gravity. And we can't improve upon the mechanism of the table because we can't improve upon gravity. And if I improve upon gravity, Jeff, I'm going to be driving a much nicer car than a Jeep. I can guarantee you that. And so,
pretty nice Jeep.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. But the table and the mechanism of how the adjustment happens. The spine is in a neutral position. Okay. Right. There should never be any twisting of the spine when an adjustment is made, ever. And so the upper cervical adjustment, particularly what we do in the office, is a side lying a type of adjustment where the spine is in a neutral position, and we use gravity and the weight of your body to help facilitate that. So as opposed to forcing a bone into a position, I don't, in my educated brain, know where that bone needs to go. I don't. A lot of chiropractors think that they do know where it needs to go, and that's why they force it. And when they force it, that's when some of that pain can happen. I just know how it's stuck. Based off of all of my analysis, right? All those different exams, your neurologic scans, your 3D spinal films, I know how it's stuck. I don't know where it needs to go. By forcing by forcing the atlas into a position that it may not have to go, we may cause more harm than good, right? So we allow that intelligence inside of the body. It's an invitation, right? As opposed to trying to supersede that intelligence inside, we invite that intelligence to help facilitate that adjustment. which makes it very gentle and it doesn't hurt.
And gravity is the main component of that.
Correct. And it's amazing, you know, we start every day warming up on the table. We have different drills. We warm up our muscles. And then, you know, after lunch, we come back and we do the same thing again, right? How many times do you think Babe Ruth swung a baseball bat before he hit a home run? Or Yadier Molina, we're in St. Louis, right? How many times does Yadier Molina take batting practice, right? It's that psychomotor skill we talk about through our head, because we educatedly, intellectually need to know what's going on, through our heart, because we serve out of love, but also through our hands, because those skills have to be lightning fast to make sure that you get the adjustment in the right time, in the right place, with the right intention. So we talk about serving people through our head, heart, and our hands.
So you actually practice
your
movement. Oh, I would have never thought.
Yeah, I never lay my hands on anybody's spine without warming up first, because it's like, you know,
I never would have imagined.
Yeah. Every athlete in any sport always warms up. Some of them may warm up more than others, but every single athlete warms up, and the adjustment is an athletic event. And so many chiropractors come in cold. And I want to make sure that I'm warmed up, and my hands and my head and my heart are all working in sync to give you the very best adjustment that you can at that time.
I didn't pick that up in the book. I never would have thought that, to be honest with you. But that's really great that you guys do that. And I you know, that just goes to show you the importance of your hands in the process. Which, yes, I would think, you know, I would think this doctor's going to touch me. Boy, he better know what he's doing. That's the fear level I have. You know, when I went in the first time, like, I'm really nervous about this. You know, does he really know what he's doing? And, you know, people always say, oh, come over in my office. I'll give you a free adjustment. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
What happens if I walk out of there and my spine doesn't work right after that?
Sure,
you know, it just, there's a lot of trepidation on my part.
Sure. And it always drives me crazy. You know, what surgeon says, oh, yeah, come on over. I'll do surgery on my coffee table. Like, what? Like, it's crazy to me. And but chiropractors, we're kind of strange. And some chiropractors are more strange than others. But there's no guessing.
Interesting.
With all of that data that we collect, I mean, even people within chiropractic school, right, that I still connect with and educate through our training program, they say, oh, could you check my atlas? Can you adjust me? I'm like, I don't have enough data on you. Yeah. Like, wait a minute. Why is a chiropractic student asking me to lay my hands on their spine without any sort of data? Right. And so if we use, a lot of times in chiropractic school, we used ourselves as the guinea pig. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You're pushing on my spine. You're adjusting my spine, but what's inside of that's what's keeping me alive. You're not using my spine as a toy. And we don't use any of our clients' spine as a toy.
So glad to hear you say that, because that's really, you know, the essence of the trepidation, I think, is that, you know, how do you really know what my inside looks like? How can you tell, or how can you tell what's optimal for me?
Sure. And
just put me in what you perceive as the optimal position for me. So no, so good to hear. And it makes a lot of sense that, you know, you would collect this data. Now, your practice and Dr. Weller stresses holding the adjustment. How different is that concept? And explain it. How different is that compared to other chiropractic disciplines?
Well, a lot of chiropractic disciplines teach that more adjustments do more good, right? The average care plan, you go to a chiropractor, Jeff, I want to see you 3 times a week for 10,000 weeks, 2 times a week for 5,000 weeks, and then once a week for the rest of your life. And you're getting adjusted every single time, right? So why does an adjustment, why is that needed every single time? And if some chiropractors use that term holding, well, they have no scientific gauge of what that means. Oh, you know, how are you feeling today, Jeff? Oh, I'm feeling good. Okay, now what, right? They base it off of feeling as opposed to off of function. And so we liken it to gardening, right? You plant a seed, you water the seed. And of course, planting the seed is the adjustment, right? You plant the seed, you put soil on the seed, and then you water it. And then you step back and you only water the soil when it needs it. Well, how do you know that plant? You don't go out to your garden every single day and water it. You check the soil to see if it's damp. With the instrument, we check the soil, we check your spine and your nervous system to see if it actually needs it. And if it's not needed, then that's a victory. I'm a dentist and you're coming to me and say, oh, do you think you could drill on even yesterday? Oh, are you sure? I'm really not feeling that great. I said, Mrs. Jones, right, neurologically, your body doesn't need it. So if I give you an adjustment today, I'm actually going to do more harm than good because the soil's still moist.
Yeah, what a great analogy. I mean, how, it just hits it home.
Sure.
I mean, it's just so simplified to understand that, you're not going to go water something that's already very damp and sufficiently watered. So, it just, it makes a ton of sense, of sense.
And going to the chiropractor and wanting to be adjusted every single time, Jeff, is like going to the dentist and saying, can you do a root canal?
Yeah.
Can you do a root canal tomorrow?
Yeah.
Can you do a root canal every week for the rest of my life?
Yeah.
No, you're not drilling on my teeth. And I absolutely need it. We want to be as conservative as possible because the adjustment resets the brain. It resets the nervous system. It changes the entire function of the body. It doesn't need it that often, right? Okay. It only needs it when it neurologically is indicated via the instrument. And that's why the instrument is so important and is why Dr. Weller and I are writing a textbook on it. To urge the chiropractic profession, please use some sort of objective data. Technique aside, your artistic application, however you adjust, right? That's a whole nother discussion, but at least let's have some type of commonality of an assessment.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I completely get it. So let's talk about the 3 T's. I know it's a very interesting concept, but how does the 3 T's relate to our listening and viewing audience, and so they can kind of inject that into this equation?
Sure. So when we're talking about the 3 T's, right, we talk about thoughts, traumas, and toxins. And so those 3 things are really the things that can cause interference or stress or compromise in the nervous system, and it turns the dimmer switch on. And I liken the analogy, right? You don't drown by falling in a river. You drown by staying submerged in it. So it's not a thought, it's not a trauma, it's not a toxin that causes that interference. It's the inability to adapt to that thought. And so a lot of people say, well, how does a thought have anything to do with my spine or my nervous system? Well, let's think about that. If I ask you to wiggle your toes right now, Jeff, and I'll do it too, go ahead and wiggle your toes. Yeah. How's that happen? That starts with an electrical chemical impulse, right, in the prefrontal cortex. It then exits the brain, goes through the brainstem, travels down the spinal cord through the sciatic nerve, telling those muscles in your foot, flex, extend, flex, right? That action happened with a thought. The placebo effect, everybody's heard about the placebo effect. Our mind can influence our physiology. And so thoughts can throw us out of adjustment. Right? We're driving down the road and we almost get hit with a car. All right? Our whole body changes, that cascade of hormones and nervous system. It all changes based off of the perception that we might get hit. Right? So that's how thoughts can negatively influence our neurologic function. Yeah. Traumas. A lot of people think traumas is a sporting injury. Injury. Right, I've had several undiagnosed concussions, right? A lot of people think concussions are car accidents, but traumas can be improper posture work. It could be sleeping on your stomach. It could be the text neck, right? It could be. It could be raking your yard, right? Or my wife was working in the flower garden. Ooh, I'm pretty sore, right? So it could be a micro trauma over, straw that broke the camel's back type of thing.
Interesting.
And the toxins are probably the toughest to deal with. Because when we talk about toxins, it could be the deodorant that we put underneath our arms that's loaded with aluminum. It could be the detergent, right, and that smell good stuff in the detergent on our clothes that we might have an allergic reaction to, right? It could be the Friday night that we had at the bar, right? It could be the McDonald's that we had, right? Those toxins are the toughest thing to deal with because we're all in this toxic world, right? We talk about toxifying our temple. Everybody wants to have a detox. Oh, doc, people every day in the office, hey, doc, what's the best detox? I'm like, hold on. If you don't tox the system, then you don't have to detox. Let's fill our body with clean, chemical-free food and not bombard our system with all these different toxins. So we really teach people the 3 T's and how that can cause, negatively impact our physiologic function.
And most of us, I would think, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't most of us think it's trauma related and overthought and over toxins in a lot of ways? I think toxins comes in
100%.
to play. Yeah, but I mean, thought, I never want to put that in there. But so very interesting. We say here at SimpleBiz360 that perception is reality. And so the new customer perception becomes the customer reality. And you said something very interesting that, through this thought, you can create perceptions that, there's, I almost got in an accident. Oh my gosh, now you have this perception of this, that, or the other. And it's this negative perception that affects your physiology. So, when people enter into business transactions, you go to buy a $250,000 house.
Sure.
That's a people say, oh, that's a very traumatic experience to some people. But what they're really saying is, I thought about it, and the perception of that is so heavy on my mind that it's causing me to be agitated inside. And there's things going on physiologically because of all that. And now I'm understanding how to connect the dots and see it all. So I think just what you've said today is very interesting for the business community to just think about, are you making the transaction process, are you making the business transaction experience with your customers pain-free? Are you creating good perceptions or bad perceptions? If you're creating good perceptions, that person's not going to go away with physiological agita and, have all this, but which could lead to, that person could say, oh my gosh, I bought the wrong house, or I shouldn't have, bought that, but those sets of cabinets for the remodel or whatever. And all of a sudden they get irritable bowel syndrome because it's all stemming from this thought pattern that's just recreating itself. And I mean, it's amazing when you break it down that way.
Right. And it, that perception really comes back to setting the expectation. Right. Everybody at some level loves to be sold and loves to sell things, right? If I'm buying a $250,000 house, in my mind, I'm saying I'm ready to purchase this $250,000 house. It's unmet expectations is when I get bent out of shape. Oh, you mean I'm throwing a number out because I've never bought a house, but I have $10,000 in closing costs. Wait a minute, $250,000 was at the top of my budget, and now I have to pay another $10,000. Right. Or I've come in. A perfect example. Last year, I saw an ad for a $99 a month Jeep lease payment. Great, right? I went to the place. I showed up and I said, "Hey, I'm here for the ad. I would love to, look at this." And so in the dusty corner, they were like, "Oh, well, there's the $99 a month Jeep. It it doesn't have power windows, right? Bare bones, right?" And I said, "Okay, well, I'd like to test drive that." And the car salesman said, "No, you don't want to test drive that. You want to test drive something else." So then he pulls around this big time Jeep. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. You're selling me on this X amount of dollar Jeep. I came in for a $99 Jeep, right? My expectations were not met. And so in the business community, right, anytime that we're doing a transaction, it could be for $5 or $50 million. Let's set the expectation on the side of the buyer and on the side of the seller so that we can come in the middle. Right. Yeah, I have a product or a service that you want. You want to purchase that, let's come in agreement that it's mutually beneficial for both parties.
Yeah. And by the way, sticking on that subject, the Dr. Weller in the book, and this book does a phenomenal job. It actually got a chapter called Expectations, which if you know our book, you've read our book, it's important to me. And you set a wonderful, ladder of expectations that the person could see themselves going through if they went into your front door, and what would take place from that point on. So I think kudos to you guys for understanding the importance of connecting that.
Sure.
Because certainly it is something that is important to the buyer and to the state.
Sure.
Of that you're leaving that buyer in. Awesome.
Right. And we talk about how people want a burger, right? Well, I love cheeseburgers. I personally love cheeseburgers, right? If I want a burger, I'm not going to go to McDonald's and pay $1 for it, right? Nothing that's wrong with the McDonald's, but it's a different experience when you buy a $1 burger. Or I could go somewhere else where I could pay $25 for a burger. My experience is going to be much different in that whole process, right? That whole sales process of buying that $25 burger is different.
Right.
And so when people come in, right, sometimes they don't read the book, sometimes they don't go to the website, and they don't really understand what it is that we do. And there's been times where I've had to turn people away that say, I just don't think I'm the right fit. You're looking for the dollar cheeseburger. You want to come in and get cracked and get out of pain and use me as the aspirin. That's fine. It's just not what I am. Let me send you to one of my colleagues that can help you meet you where you're at. And I think a lot of times in business, we have this scarcity mindset that there's not enough people to buy our product or service, and it's just really not the case, right? Regardless of your product or service, oversaturation doesn't really exist. There's plenty of business to go around. Yeah. For example, in a 10-mile radius of our office, there's 114 chiropractors. 10 miles, there's 114 chiropractors.
Wow.
And we all do something different, and we all think we're right, including us. We just have science to back it up what it is that we do. But if all 2 million people that lived in St. Louis, if every single one of them saw a chiropractor, we wouldn't have enough. Like, there wouldn't be enough chiropractors to go around. So whatever your business that you're involved in, don't have that scarcity mindset. Really try to meet the customer or the client where they're at and put them in a position to succeed, because though they may not be spending money in your business, they might know somebody later on down the line. And so when you set that expectation and really serve them to the best of your ability, then likely you could get that back. But you've got to serve out of your heart as opposed to serve out of a scarcity mindset.
Yeah, great advice for sure. Absolutely. Talk about why do you view your the people who pay you for your services as a client versus a patient?
Patient, yeah. So a lot of chiropractors say patients. When you say patient, that means you're treating something, right? I don't treat, cure, or diagnose anything. My only job is to objectively know when an adjustment is needed and when it's not needed, and if an adjustment is needed, that it actually happened, right? So we call them clients because we're providing a professional service that we are getting compensated for. So I don't treat anything. I just normalize and optimize the nervous system function in your body so you can be the best version of Jeff. Maybe that's to be a better husband, a better dad, a better friend, a better neighbor, a better business owner. Whatever that thing is that you do that you're passionate about, let's help you be the best version of that. Yeah. And so I'm not treating anything because we talk lifestyle, right? Healthy body, getting weller is about a healthy body, healthy mind, healthy relationships, thoughts, traumas, toxins. Well, I'm not treating anything. I'm just I'm helping you break your state thought-wise, optimize the potential within your body, and hey, when you're at the grocery store, let's try to make better decisions to not toxify the temple. So we call them clients because our service to them is far-reaching as opposed to just treating gout. Because when I give you a diagnosis, hi, nice to meet you, my name's gout. Hi, nice to meet you, my name's cancer, my name's high blood pressure, my name's diabetes. No, my name's Michael. You can just call me Michael. It just so happens that my body is broken down. Yeah. For example, you said, "Oh, I have gout." I would 100% disagree with that. If it was your gout, you would get rid of it. It's your body that has the gout, right?
That's true.
Because we own that. Yeah. I have gout, and that's an identity. No, your body has it, right? I found myself my senior year of high school 100 pounds overweight. That was my weight, and I got rid of it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
As opposed to my diagnosis, right? We can't get rid of it, so let's not own it. My body has, as opposed to I have. So we try to plant that seed to say, no. It's your body has something, not you, because your body's just the holding tank, right, of the spirit and the mind. And so, I mean, we can take off your foot, and Jeff would still exist, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, seriously, great perspective on how you break this down, because it really truly is an atmosphere we're living in today of, wellness has to be adopted by people, by families, because we're going down a trajectory of the medical profession where, we're finding the need to take care of ourselves independent of a doctor taking care of us. And, wellness is all encompassing. Wellness is your thoughts. It is your toxins. It is getting rid of toxins in the house. It is trying to stay safe, certainly
Sure.
eliminating trauma in your life, this, that, and the other. But it's also understanding just what you said, that the body is responding one way or another, because inside that holding tank, things aren't functioning properly.
Right.
And that's what amazed me about when my body had gout, when I went to the doctor and he said, you're the only person that's approached this that way. And now I tried for 2.5 years and I could not beat it. And it just came down to, I gave it a good old try. I probably had 5 or 6 bouts of it that were just, very inflammatory for me. And, we realized that for the first time in my life at age 60, I had to take my first medication, allopurinol, which I take to,
Sure.
to eliminate the uric acid. My body just was overproducing uric acid, which caused this. But, in that process, the doctor would even sit down with me on occasion and, he'd say, I had somebody come in here with diabetes the other day and 18 years old. And I said, well, you've got to change the way you live. And person said, no, doc, just give me whatever I need. I'm not going to change. And, he said, do you realize what could happen at 35 years old, 40 years old?
Sure.
You realize you could put yourself in a position by not fixing what's going on inside you. You
Right.
could lose a foot, lose both feet, lose legs,
Sad.
lose your eyesight. And doc, I'm not going to worry about that now. Just give me what I need. So we really are in a society that tends to not want to, know about what's under the hood. Just,
Sure.
my car's making noises, just fix it. I don't need to know. You don't need to tell me what's going on.
Sure. And that's why we always say that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And it's so much, a lot of people maybe don't have the access to care.
Yeah.
Right. And I say, well, everybody has time for the emergency room. I have a lot of entrepreneurs that see us. Everybody has time for the emergency room, and everybody finds a way to pay that bill.
Yeah.
Right. Being preventative is so much less expensive than being reactionary.
Yep.
Right? Medical doctors, the medical profession is phenomenal
Bingo.
in an acute, traumatic, reactionary way when it's needed.
Bingo.
But if we have a lifestyle thing that can be prevented, then we're saving money, cash out of our pockets. We're saving that, and we're just living a better lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's tough to plant seeds to get people to change their life. But when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to plant that seed. And that's why I don't have patience, because I have clients.
Yeah.
Because if I say that, right, I'm spending time with you. I'm not treating anything. I'm just helping you be the best version of you by maybe changing your perception of things or changing your expectation of what your life can be.
Very interesting. I know you talk a lot about sleep and positioning in sleep. Paint a little picture for us. Sleeping on your stomach, what happens with that versus sleeping on your back or your side?
Yeah, selfishly, I want everybody to sleep on their stomach because I call that job security. Because it's actually really traumatic. When we sleep on our stomach, what happens is we turn our head to one side. When we turn our head to one side, we're actually cutting off blood supply to half of our brain. A lot of people don't know that. And so not only are we cutting off blood supply to half the brain says, hey, Michael, can you switch to the other side? Because I'd really like blood. And so I switch to the other side. And it's like, oh man, I switched to the other side. And so all night I'm like a sprinkler because I can't stay in that one position all night long, because then I'm lost blood supply to that half the brain. And also what happens if you find yourself, are you a stomach sleeper?
No, I'm a side sleeper though.
Good man. If I find myself turning my head to the right, if I'm on my stomach, my right leg will come up. And so what happens is if staying on my stomach, I turn my head to the right side, I'm stretching that spinal cord. Right? I'm putting undue stress on the spine and what's inside of that spinal cord. And so my right leg is going to come up. And when my right leg comes up, I'm taking out a wet towel and I'm wringing that out. And it just so happens that wet towel is my spine. And I don't rest well on my right side because I'm losing half that blood supply. And so my brain says, hey, Michael, subconsciously, flip to the left. So I flip to the left and my left leg comes up. So all night long, I'm running in bed by staying on my stomach. And when people don't sleep well, I talk about sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
When they don't sleep well, they don't heal well. And I mean, you think about, you've watched the movies where they do sleep deprivation to prisoners. Things change in a hurry when you can't sleep well because the body can't heal. Because what happens when we sleep, right, our brain is this huge computer system. And when we sleep, right, we go into our brain function changes and we go into different brain waves. And so the brain is like, oh, that's important, that's not important, that is important, right? So it weeds out a lot of the things that we may not necessarily need. So when I see a lot of students, right, who pull all-nighters, it's so harmful for the brain because it can't weed out, it can't weed the garden. And so sleeping on your stomach is not only structurally poor, it's neurologically poor, but also it hurts your brain function.
So what would, if you're a stomach sleeper and you sleep on your stomach for, all your life, I mean, what is that doing? Is your brain drying out? What's happening?
It's not necessarily drying out, but what's happening is that you just don't rest well. Yeah. And when you're not resting well, again, you don't heal well. Yeah. And again, we can live our entire life never having me put my hands on your spine. We could do what we need to do with the dimmer switch on because that becomes our new normal. People are okay with that. I mean, you can live a very fruitful, abundant life and never have an upper cervical adjustment to optimize the potential within your body. But while we're living on Earth, let's just have the best experience possible. So yes, many people say, oh, chiropractors, you care about my spine. Yes, I care about your spine. I more so care about what's inside of it, but I more so care about the experience that you've had while we have time.
We talk about that all the time in business. So yes, life is much better when the experience factor is high, whether it's at business or at work or whether at home. But yes, I mean, if the experience is good and pain-free and you're able to be the best version of yourself, or you're able to take a customer down a path where, that experience is the best possible experience they could come to find. There's just, those are two less things to worry about in life. And you've got enough curveballs coming at you in life. Trust me.
Yeah.
If you can be preventative at home, it costs less, it feels better. It sets the stage for a better experience in life. It really does. And there's a lot of ways. And, we're going to do a show, I think, here down the road on essential oils and some of the things that come into play there. But my question to you, and my wife had a question too, is, do you incorporate essential oils into your practice at all, or into what you do?
That's a great question. I want to go back just one step.
Sure.
And when you talked about, when you were talking about the lifestyle thing, we always talk about the spoke of the wheel, right? The spoke of the wheel, Jeff should be at the spoke of the wheel. And then on the outside, he has his hobbies, his work, his wife, his kids, his grandkids, right? All these things that Jeff likes to do or has to do, right, is on the outside. And Jeff should be at the center. But what happens is when we have a health condition or something, a curveball comes, what happens is that health condition and us in the center switches. So now gout's in the center. Now your whole life is dictated by gout. I really want to play with my kids, or I really want to play with my grandkids, but I can't because I have a flare-up. Right? And so then your whole life becomes dictated by this health condition. My wife had asthma, right? She couldn't, it was so annoying. We had to carry around her inhaler, right? That became her life until I said, no, life needs no assistance, just no interference. And so we put her back in the center. Right. And so we just want people to be back in the center.
Yeah.
A lot of chiropractors, going back to your question, a lot of chiropractors use essential oils in their office. I think essential oils are fantastic when it's needed. It's very difficult to know scientifically when essential oils are needed.
Right.
And I'm not saying that I'm the way by any means, but I'm definitely a way. But I play by this set of rules called chiropractic. And chiropractic simply means an adjustment done by hand to the spine, right? Anything outside of that is simply not chiropractic, right? It's baseball, right? Home, first, second, third. If I take out second base, I'm not playing baseball. I'm not, I don't make up the rules. I just play by the rules. And so chiropractors, they have this heart to serve. They want to put on their chiro cape and serve the world. And so they start dabbling in all these other things. I'm of the opinion nobody can do what I can do, right? I'm one of 500 doctors in the world that does what I do. Let me do that thing, right? You don't ask Yadier Molina to pitch. He doesn't play shortstop.
Right.
He's the catcher.
Right.
Let me normalize nervous system function.
Right.
And let me put you in the place of somebody that uses essential oils. You need physical therapy? Fantastic. I have a physical therapist that I work with. You need massage? Great. That's not me. You need acupuncture. You need nutrition stuff, right? I want to be on the healthcare team. I want to do what I do because nobody can do what I do to that high level of skill.
Yeah, great perspective.
So yeah, I think essential oils are great, but let's just let's stick to our thing and be the very best, right? Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah,
right?
bingo.
Shotgun approach or a sniper approach.
Bingo.
Right.
Bingo. Absolutely. You're full of analogies.
That's
Holy
right.
smokes, you're a young guy and you got more than. I mean, I sales guys are that I grew up with. They're going to listen to this and go, man, how we should have had this guy write all this stuff for us.
Sure.
Analogies are just so great, and you're using them in the perfect context because you're making the complicated understandable, and I thank you for that. And
you're welcome.
Tell Dr. Weller I thank him for that as well. So, social media, it's a big part of what we do now. All of us, we have to embrace it. You have a presence on Instagram. I've seen some of your Instagram videos. Holy smokes. So you obviously got you now know, listening to Dr. Lee, that you've got a phenomenal mic and camera presence, but you should see some of these Instagram videos he's done. So tell everybody, how can they find you on social media? How do you attract clients within the network of the Weller practice?
Sure. So my biggest presence is on the gram, as millennials call it. And so you can search Dr. Michael Lee, and that's Dr. Michael. Doctor is just the DR, and then Michael, Michael, and then Lee, LEA. Okay. So just search Dr. Michael Lee, and you'll see my videos pop up. I also have a little bit of a presence on Facebook.
Okay.
And I also have a YouTube channel. And I see a lot of people in the entrepreneurial space because you can have a setting where all of my stuff posts on the same platforms, particularly when we're talking about Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Well, your audience is different for all three of those platforms, right? Now, a little bit of an older crowd is going to be what's on Facebook, correct, right? Most older people, at least from my experience, are not necessarily on Instagram, right, or Twitter. Twitter is probably the less. So I try to craft. I have the same message, but I try to craft it a little bit different to niche into that audience.
Okay.
But yeah, so YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. You can look up Dr. Michael Lee, and or you can go to the gettingweller.com, and that's our practice website. And so there's a litany of research. You can get your own copy of the It Just Makes Sense book, Your Guide to Upper Cervical Care. But it's all the entrepreneurs out there that are on that social media grind, it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, you're fighting tooth and nail for all those likes. But what it is you're getting an attentional bias. Right? Like what you're doing with SimpleBiz360. You're producing a lot of free content that people can digest, and you're getting that attentional bias. In a sense, you're the Dale Carnegie of today, right? And I know that Dale Carnegie is a big influence on your life.
1/10 of 1% of Dale, by the way. Yeah, not yet. Go ahead. Yeah.
But you want to produce a lot of free content so that you get that attentional bias and you become the expert, right? When I first met you at the Keyman Breakfast, you said, "I help businesses work more efficiently." Right? That's the only thing you said. I said, "Okay, well, I think my business can work more efficiently." Right. And through reading your book and watching these podcasts, you've gained my attentional bias. And so now any business question I have, you're now the guy. Maybe you're not Dale Carnegie, or maybe you're not the Gary Vaynerchuk or the Grant Cardone, but you have gained my attentional bias. And so for any of you out there that are building a social media presence, just give out free content. Free. And you're going to be planting seeds. We've talked about the garden.
Yep.
You're planting seeds. At some point in time, those seeds are gonna seed in the soil, and they're gonna grow. Yep. And when they grow, then it's time to reap what you sowed. Yep. But it's tough. Yep. And I mean, I've been on the grind for about a year now, and I haven't had any conversions yet from social media. Right. But it takes time, right? Business relationships, you're calling on contacts. Yep. It takes time.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. And the folks here, counsel me early on. And when I thought of podcast, I always thought of the listening experience, the audible experience,
Sure.
and not the visual. And they said, "Oh no, you got to do YouTube." And I said, "I'm not going to do my podcast on YouTube." No, you have to. Why? Well, because as a search engine, that just gets so many more. It just has so much more visibility than trying to put yourself just onto, Spotify or Apple or Stitcher or wherever. And they were absolutely right, because our numbers are just, from what we do on YouTube is just so overwhelmingly more than what we do on Audible. And it's just so we've gotten some we've gotten some good runs. We are now we're viewed in about 12 countries, and I think my weekly numbers, when I look at them, I mean, I still get more views outside the U.S. than I do in the U.S.
Wow,
so,
that's such a big deal.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not I'm not killing it, and in that sense, like a lot of these big podcast guys are, but yeah, we're trying to get a simplified business message out. Not everybody gets it. Not everybody gets your type of chiropractic.
Sure.
And it's just one of those things, you have to, I kind of get antsy sometimes. Like I wish more people would gravitate to it, but it takes time. So sooner or later, someone of an influence will pick up on it and say, you know what, this is so stinking simple that why aren't we paying attention to this? And that's really what I've tried to do, is look at it from a practical, pragmatic point of view. And if I was to say, just like you guys rest everything on the fact that, you have to collect data first.
Sure.
And then you're looking at the C1, C2. I always say that if I had to boil it down to three things, it's first of all, you've got to respond to 100% of any inquiry. But the most important thing is not to follow up, it's to follow through. And when I find issues, when I run into issues myself, when I talk to other business owners, when I talk to other professionals, where is the rub in this thing you did, this transaction you did?
Sure.
8 out of 10 times, it's in the lack of the follow through. It's not that difficult, but we make it difficult.
Sure.
Just like, how many people try to, I think about your profession, I think about mine. I just heard a story not too long ago. There was a problem, and it was with a big brand name. And this was a private label manufacturing company doing a job for this big brand name. And the big brand name had a problem, and they came to the people, and 3 of the 4 executives immediately gravitated to what lie were they going to whip up. And this guy had this lie, and that guy had that lie, and this guy had that lie. And it was all this, concoction of, lies. I mean, what else you call it? And the other person opted for, no, I'm just going to tell the customer the truth. And the customer accepted the truth. The lies never got out, but the propensity in the business world, almost like in your world, it's to medicate. It's to don't just tell the truth. Wow, what a novel concept that would be, Don't tell the truth, lie immediately. Hey, don't fix what's inside, doc. Just give me some medicine so I can treat this and I'll be on my merry way. I really don't want to get under the engine and figure out what's going on. Yeah. And, I'm amazed at how many business people just say, I don't want to play by the way Mason and SimpleBiz360 is talking about. That's not, I got other ways to do it, and they're more deviant, they're more outside the perimeter. And when you go inside the perimeter, which means you go into the holding tank, you go into the belly of the beast. What's the real problem here? Real problem is 8 out of 10 of you aren't following through. You're telling people you're going to do something, and you don't do it.
Don't do it. Yeah.
That's the rub.
Sure.
And it's just frustrating that that's what our world's come down to, that we hear people say one thing or another and they never follow through. Imagine if I invited you to do this podcast today and you're like, honey, I've called this guy, I've texted him, I've emailed him. I don't even know how to get a hold of him, but he's never responded back to me.
Sure.
That happens all the time.
Yeah. And it's so funny that you say that, Jeff, because I gave you a test today and you passed with flying colors. So Jeff and I are involved in this Bible study, and he was on the Zoom call and I was there in person, and I said, hey, Jeff, I'll see you at 4. Well, our podcast, right, we weren't going to start filming at 4. We were supposed to be done by 4. And he said, no, I'll see you at 3. And then within 6 minutes, right, this was at 8. It's 8:06, I got a text, hey, Michael, I'll see you at 3 today, right? And so it's amazing that you say what you say and, write it in the book, and then you also walk the walk. And I think that's so important for you building a brand, is that you've actually done it, as opposed to, it's easy to talk about it, but it's so much harder to do it. So I give you kudos and thumbs up for that, because it's cool to see, and that's the integrity. Right, and that's the principle that you stand upon.
That's the little stuff. I got a call yesterday from a CEO, and he said, gosh, I wish people got it like you did. I just got to pay you a call and thank you. And
sure.
And again, I'm not trying to toot a horn. We're just, if you've never read the book, I mean, it's $18.95, and I'm going to ask Michael, Dr. Lee, to tell me what his favorite part was. But it's $18.95. Got 255 business tools, and it's just simple stuff.
Timeless business.
Yeah, thank you. We try to just break it down in its simplistic form, and it's just easy 1% things to do to change the business. So yeah, what did you like best?
So I loved the book. It's set up very much like How to Win Friends and Influence People by, I'm sure he's your favorite author, Dale Carnegie. But I love the silent business killers, and I really liked how you talked about the guardrails, right? Keeping you on pace. And when you were talking about walking the perimeter and seeing all these things go wrong, people come to me, and I said, all the things that you've done with your health to this point has failed, and that's why you're in front of me. And so what you do, all the things you've done in business has failed, and that's why I'm here right now. So let's just put aside all of that stuff that you thought you knew, and let's just start from scratch. Right. But I really love the communication. Yeah. Right. My business is all based off of communication, right? Well, wait a minute. I have an issue here and you're working here. And so I loved about how you talked about, you hammered it, communication, page 121 to be exact. You hammered communication because it's out of respect for the intelligence and the time and of the money that your customer, of whatever your service or business is, it's out of respect for them communicating clearly and effectively. And I think the guardrail analogy can stay like in that communication.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So no, it's out of respect. And, I think you've obviously articulated your craft well today, and your profession's well represented by you. And I mean that. And it's, but you've, if anyone has watched this that is saying, I didn't come away with understanding what's going on here, you've done, they're not listening. You've done a great job.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
And, I hope I really do. These are fun for me to do, fun for me to learn more about this. And it's fun for me to be able to bring a professional like Dr. Lee on the show to help you understand, again, in this sea of chiropractic offerings, what makes upper cervical care different, and as far as a chiropractic discipline, and how can it apply to you? So, at any rate, Michael, please give the folks. You are in what town? What part of St. Louis?
We are in beautiful Des Peres.
Des Peres. Okay.
So yeah, we are 63131. So if you know where Surf and Shoreline is, we're right by there. Okay. And I believe we're on the. I'm not very good with directions because as a millennial, I grew up with maps, and so I don't have to know directions.
Yeah, that's great.
We're smack dab in the middle of Des Peres, where Manchester splits. Okay. And so that's where our office is at. And I would like to plug your book. I loved reading your SimpleBiz360 book because it doesn't necessarily read like a story. And so you can literally pick it up. Right. And in fact, I have picked it up a few times, and just any page or topic. Yep. And so I really like that you can read it cover to cover, which I did the first time, but it's also a quick reference manual for anything business. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And that's what it's really designed to be. You put on the shelf too after you're done. And if you need to look at, hey, let me look in service. Let me look in communication. Let me look at money. See what he says. Or I may not have a point of view that would be beneficial to you, but chances are I do. And so I appreciate that. Appreciate the plug. So everybody can find you on the Instagram handles you've given, Weller.com is it
gettingweller.com.
Gettingweller.com. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. And do you guys ever do any webinars or anything like that, or have you?
We actually did do it started out as an hour and a half webinar on headaches, because so many people are dealing with headaches. And it was tough for us because, we talk about the congruity of what we communicate with, right? We don't talk pain, we don't talk conditions, we talk lifestyle, but so many people struggle with headaches. And if you go into the Google search, right, and get in the research, if you connect headaches and nervous system, there's over 14,000 different connections, causes between the nervous system and headaches. So we did a webinar on headaches. And so we want to do more because there's these complex diagnoses that people say, oh, well, I suffer with headaches, and that there's no help for that. And so we want to produce more of those webinars just to let people be aware of the fact that's not normal. And as we always say, life needs no assistance, just no interference to its functioning. And the fact that you may have gout or headaches or irritable bowel or hypothyroidism or hormonal issues or asthma or anything else lets us know that there's a dysfunction within the nervous system, and we're the nervous system people.
What a great tagline! One of the best of all time, I think. It's just, and it makes so much sense. But
much so, we wrote a book called "It Just Makes Sense."
Yes, it just makes sense.
That's
I love
right.
It.
Yeah,
with Jersey. Yeah.
I've actually found myself watching your stuff, which I'd like to make another comment. I like the fact you said 27. You're on 27 different platforms.
Yes.
Yeah, I cannot stand the podcasts. Like when I go in the Apple podcast, I don't like how they're organized. Any podcast.
Yeah.
I don't like digesting content there, but I watch all your stuff on YouTube. And so I appreciate your different platforms to digest it in different ways.
Yeah.
But the long story short, I've started saying, you know, because I'm watching you and I'm working out and I'm hearing you, and I don't necessarily see you, but I'm hearing you. And I'm like, like before I just said, and now I guess I'm 3 times better because I started watching SimpleBiz360.
Well, and growing up in Jersey, I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of Jersey folks that just say 1 yeah or 2 yeahs, but a lot of us just say yeah. And just the way it is. So it's one of those inside things. But no, thank you so much. So there's a book in the works. What's the next book? When is this coming out?
Yeah, so we are, Dr. Weller and I, writing a textbook right now to train doctors and students on the uniqueness of that infrared scan that we talked about.
Right.
Just urging them, hey, let's all use the same method of analysis. And we've been working on it almost a year and a half now. And really trying to get in the nitty gritty, because so often, at least in chiropractic school, right, you talk about neurology, and neurology is the toughest subject by far. Biochemistry is pretty hard, but neurology is so complex. And the teachers, the instructors often talk down. Oh, you're too stupid to learn that right now, or you're not ready for it. And you're always getting pushed off. You're not ready for this yet. And it's never made sense to me. And so part of my role in this book is to take these really high-level, complex neurological ideas and break them down into analogies that we can better understand. So the goal is to get the textbook out to the editor by the end of the month, because we've been working on it, and it's
that upcoming. Wow.
Yeah, that upcoming, and it's you have to have the diagrams and have to have everybody give credit and you do citations. So we're looking to get it out by the end of the month and distribute it to the chiropractic profession. It's not a so many times chiropractors we circle the wagons and we shoot inward, right? We eat our own young. Part of this textbook is helping empower these young doctors and older doctors that have been out for a while to say, hey, this is what's going on. Let's all come together and at least have a unifying method of analysis that we can all agree when an adjustment is needed and when an adjustment is not needed. Yeah. How you do the adjustment, we don't necessarily care about that. But let's have the same analysis of when it is.
How do you determine when? Well, very interesting. I mean, that's a great and noble cause. So we wish you all the best with that. And hey, we have had a blast, and we end every show, as you know, with Lost in the Shuffle track. And
Lost in the Shuffle, that's right.
so it's you know, basically it's a rock and roll song that maybe didn't get airtime and a lot of play. Maybe it did, but it's important to you. It was it was something that was a significant song in your life. And what would that one be today?
Sure, that would be American Pie by Don Mclean, and that's a famous song. I do know that, but my dad was a teacher when I was young, and so he would stay up all night. He was a chemistry teacher, and so he would stay up all night grading papers and lab reports, and so our whole basement was full of, subwoofers the size of the refrigerator and turntables and this and that, and so he would get it all set up, and so he would play oldies. Right. For him it was newies, but for me it was oldies music, and so I would fall asleep because my room was above where he graded paper. So I would go to sleep with the walls, with the American Pie.
How about that?
And so I actually on the way to the podcast, I think it's an 8-minute 36-second song, and I think I have pretty much every verse memorized, and I've never looked up the lyrics. It's just subconsciously, right? I heard it so many times.
How cool is that? Well, yeah, very. Well, when it came out, it hit #1, and it was 1971 off his second album. It's the album cover where he's got his thumb up and he's got the little star and the red and blue stripe on it. And he's a folk singer, kind of Pete Seeger protege, and
sure.
In that genre, when I grew up, folk music was still big. We had a lot of Peter, Paul and Mary, had a lot of the Seekers out of Australia.
Sure.
We had a lot of that influence, and certainly he came from that. And it's a ballad, and it's really introspective. And funny thing is, as I researched it, he doesn't always hasn't always been forthcoming about exactly explaining the lyrics and what it has to mean. It has to do with loss. It has to do with loss of innocence. A lot of different things.
Sure.
But there's a lot to that song, and
there is a lot to
I don't think he's leaked the whole story yet, from what I can tell.
Sure.
So he leaves us in a little suspense. But great tune. We're going to have it up to the right-hand portion of the screen, the YouTube screen. If you see it, it'll be a little card. You can click on it. It is about 8.5 minutes. We're going to put up there the actual version from the album. And
from the album,
yeah. So a lot of fun. And
I actually had a clinician in school, and he was a big rocker, and so he'd clinician by day, and then he'd go do these house shows or whatever. And I think he was talking about the day the music died. There was 3 main influencers in music. And I think they may have died in a car accident or a plane
Buddy
crash.
Holly was one of them that you referred to, correct?
Yeah,
yes,
and so I think their death all was around the same time.
Yeah.
And so this song was a ballad, and the day the music died, is referencing that.
Yeah, and it has a lot to do with Buddy Holly, which is interesting if you ever get a chance, if you're ever going up to Minneapolis and you're in Iowa, Clear Lake, Iowa is that's the theater where that plane took off from that night. That area of the country took off from, and Buddy Holly and other folks, the Big Bopper, lost their life, and that was tragic event. But it was. But it's a great song, awesome, great lyrics, great tune, and just really makes you think. It's a chin rubber,
Yeah. And if you're a Star Wars fan, Weird Al Yankovic actually did a parody.
Did he really?
About Star Wars, and I also know that one word for word. But
I do not know that one.
You might have to look.
I am going to look it up because I'm intrigued. But well, thank you so much, Dr. Lee. It is a pleasure. It's a pleasure to know you and get to know you, and you're so articulate. It's such a nice job, folks. I hope you got a lot from this episode, and certainly it'll be up for years to come if you ever want to dip back into it, and you know where to buy the book. On Amazon, just makes sense. Dr. Eddie Weller. And again, thanks so much. You have a wonderful weekend, guys. Have a great weekend as well. Thanks so much.